If you want to have an exceptional performance, then the preparation has got to be exceptional. We're not doing big things, we're doing small things often. Finishing is one of the most important parts of the whole race. Matter of fact, for me, it kind of is.
You build performance over time, and particularly with nutrition. If I wasn't in Joe's life, Joe would live on toast and cheese. He really would. It's learning how to fail, and I think that's something we could all do better with, how we teach our young people to do that, because it's a fact of life, and how we move forward from that is a testament to who that person can become.
Hi, Danielle McBride here, brand manager of White's Oats, and today I was talking to Joe Barr, ultra endurance cyclist, and Gillian Mooney, performance nutrition from Team Joe Barr, on marginal gains, and just really touching on some of the aspects they've used over the years to really enhance their performance and really what's made them so successful. Really interesting podcast. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I did, and hopefully you can incorporate some of the insights and the lessons that they talk about into your own everyday lives. I think, first of all, Joe, for you, you've had such a career history spanning probably decades now, a litany of world records and titles and on a global scale. But how has just tweaking all those little small margins, how has that enabled you to improve your performance year on year?
Well, I think really it's a complete thinking behind what we're doing in 2012, where we're reaching further. And to me, reaching further is all about moving forward from the education of the last race that you were in and looking at all the small aspects that you can change that collectively make a difference. In Sebring 24 Hour in Florida is an example of that, whereby last year when I was there, we came very close to the magical 500 miles in 24 hours. We were only 15 miles short. What we did was we've sat down and we looked at all the small aspects that could close or help to close that gap. We've worked on aerodynamics, we've worked on tire choices and pressures when we understood it, and more importantly, we've worked an awful lot on the change to the nutritional strategy that we would run in the event. So we're looking at all the small pieces, even the hydration. The amount of hydration in the first aspect of that race had a huge impact on the later part of it. So there's all these small gains that we're looking to try and compress them in, and if you can manage to get 5 or 6 or 7 of those right, then you're going to perform a little bit better, which is a little bit of gain, and slowly but surely you chip away to get closer to the goal.
Yeah. And would you say there's any one area in particular that would give you a bigger gain over another, or does each have its own values? And
I think each one,
every aspect is important in its own right, and
yes, I think
one particular one that stands out.
Absolutely, I think that every one of them have a total importance in their own right, and I think that every aspect that you look at is unique to itself. I mean, the way we look at aerodynamics, the way we look at tire choices, the way we look at nutrition, the way that we look at aerodynamics in bikes and stuff. I think that the use of technology helps us an awful lot from a mechanical point of view, because obviously, we can understand how the bike performs. Yeah. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to move a mass through space and time. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. And we're trying to do it quickly. So anything that will enable that mass to pass through air quicker is going to be an aid, and anything that can fuel it to push it through there is going to be an aid. So and those are the key areas that we try to work on, leading to this particular race, we've made a few changes in our preparation as well, in that we've focused solely on power and speed.
I mean, it sounds very technical. I guess it is very technical. Is that where the team in Team Joe Barr really comes into its own? Because absolutely you're doing your thing on your bike, but it feels like it's all this data that's being gathered by the team to help you constantly move forward in the most efficient way. And it's them finding those small gains. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, even whenever we debrief after each race or whatever, there'll be crew members that'll come along and say, right, did you realise, or do you know that this happened, or do you know when you look at this here, this equals this?
Yep.
So they're actually bringing those stats and data that I sometimes don't see to the table. So it's an accumulation of all of that, and I think that all of those are very, very key. When you look at, we're very, very fortunate to have a lot of engineers and a lot of strategical people on the team. Like, and whenever you put those people with those skill sets together, they very quickly identify gaps in what you're doing.
I think that's a really good point when it comes to team, because all the time that Joe makes up on the bike, so say he's riding brilliantly and the aerodynamics is working well and the clothing changes and he's gaining, you know, a minute per mile, which 1,000-mile race is significant. If the team, when he stops to do a clothing change, if the team is inefficient with that clothing change, 10 minutes just goes like that. Someone can't find something, there's another minute, you know. So it's amazing how much time in a race can be lost by team inefficiency once your rider is stopped, from clothing, feeding, toilet breaks, not being able to find things. And you can imagine after 2 days and 2 nights and 3 days, not being able to find things is a common occurrence. So the amount of efficiency around that is vital.
And is that something that as a team you can prepare for? I mean,
you must.
I mean, I mean, it's interesting, Joe. We talk. I mean, it's clearly easy for our listeners, hopefully, to understand. You know, training for, you know, on a bike, but actually training to be a team. And I think if any of our listeners, if you're in an organisation or you're in a workplace, you know the importance of teamwork, but it's not always just as easy to kind of lead as one. So Gillian, you know, I guess you're in the thick of the team. Is there anything that you actually do maybe that helps you in that efficiency? Do you have a thing with the guys that it's, you know, how do we raise our game? You know, Joe's obviously, you know, raising the game in 2020. But what about Team Joe Barr in those small margins?
It's such a good question. I mean, all of the people on our team want to win, and no one wants to be a reason that Joe or the team loses time in a race, because time lost it's a huge amount of effort for Joe to get the time back. So we're very motivated to be efficient. Now, efficiency is not everyone's strength, and in a team, we've all got to play to our strengths. So there's some things and areas like the clothing bins. No one touches the clothing bins but Andy Campbell. If anything comes off Joe's body, like an arm warmer or a leg warmer, it goes to Andy Campbell, who puts it in the right box, because stopping on the side of a road, we do multiple clothing changes so Joe's body is comfortable performing in a certain environment.
And in certain temperatures, I guess, as we mentioned, with if you're cycling through the night or during the day.
So getting leg warmers off and on can be like a 6-7 minute stop. But if you can't find those leg warmers, then that's now a 15-minute stop. So it is simple things like that, that under pressure you tend to just, I've got a pair of arm warmers, just throw them over in that corner. That can cost 15 minutes down the road. It's a ruthless attention to things like that. For me, no one touches my kitchen. No one touches my kitchen.
And they know that, Gillian. I imagine at this stage they know that.
So
I mean, it's funny. I think, you know, I think our listeners can relate to frantic mornings, especially if they've got a family and they're trying to get out the door, and that classic, you know, where did you put my handbag? Where are the car keys? All of those things. I mean, any tips for, you know, how to just, you know, tweak those little day-to-day tasks that you're mentioning to really improve efficiency?
Well, I think that one of the things that I discovered was like that the communication between whatever person that you're interacting with, let's say for argument's sake, it's Sandy who handles my clothing. it's very, very important that I give very clear instructions to him and he asks very clear questions to me, because that process actually enhances the whole smoothness of, if you want to call it that, of how the whole thing rolls. Yeah. So, you know, he'll ask me a question about whatever's going on, so I give him a very clear answer. Yeah. And he'll say, right, I'm going to put this on, or we're going to put that on. One of the things you got to remember is, in my world, whenever you get, let's say you've gone through a whole day in searing temperatures and you're completely sticking with sweat, a number of days of doing that, I don't actually have the physical strength, believe it or not. I can push the bike, but to do other things, I struggle. So to get my arm warmers peeled off that's on like an orange skin is actually very difficult to do. And more importantly, getting the fresh ones put back on is even more difficult. Yeah. And that's all energy that I don't need to be wasting.
Yeah. And then just turning to nutrition, because it's vital to all of this. You know, what are the small margins, you know, that you find that have worked or that you've tweaked? Because I think one of the things that we're all guilty of is going, you know, hell for leather. It's either feast or famine sometimes, and it's hard for that to stick. But for you, Gillian, on the nutrition side, is there, you know, what have you found that works? What other, you know, what's sort of small margins within food and diet really?
You're bang on in that sometimes people make the mistake of trying to make really big changes that are harder to keep the momentum going. And particularly with nutrition, small changes done consistently over time have a huge impact. And I would say, if you're going to be good at something, be good at being consistent. So pick your small changes and stick with them and add to them. So, you know, for some people it could be, I'm going to have a warm breakfast before I leave the house, or another one could be, I'm going to pack a snack for me, so, you know, I'm not going to go and buy something easy and accessible at 11 o'clock, and just stick with that until it's truly ingrained as a habit. And then add to that, because you build performance over time. And particularly with nutrition, I think about it like a bank balance. If you put small deposits into your nutritional bank balance, it's cumulative interest over years. And you want to be building that nutritional resilience by small changes done consistently. So
true, really good advice.
Consistency is king when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah. And Joe, going back to the team, I mean, for you, did you recognize very early on that small margins were going to make or break this, you know, your ultra, you know, cycling career? Has that informed the team that you've built around you? I mean, you touched on, you know, the engineers, the strategists. Has that influenced those decisions?
I think in the early days, whenever I started at the start, I didn't actually realize is the truth of what those gains were going to bring, because you know, the gaps that I had were so great. But I think when we got to 2015 and you know what I call our arrival, when our arrival happened, we got a lot more focused on the finer details. We were particular about gathering the data. We were particular about actually interrogating it. And understanding where we were positioned against where the top end was. So we set about very purposefully, and again, it's no different to what Jill just said there. Like, we're not doing big things, we're doing small things often. And that's what's moving us forward. So if you looked at us as a team, sort of really, certainly from 2014 forward, every year we have made 1 or 2 steps closer to the top of the sport that we're in, and I don't think it's any great surprise at this point that we're in the top.
And I suppose when you get to the level that you're at, and you know you're going for that ultimate goal of world ultra cycling champion, that is it harder to find those gains? I suppose in the early days, I think for any of our listeners who's been on a weight loss journey, the initial weight falls off, you're all motivated, and then it gets harder and harder as the time goes on. Did you find that in your career, Joe, that in the early days, when you were learning, the gains were there to be taught, and now they are so marginal, it's harder?
Absolutely. And the other thing is as well, unfortunately, time is catching up on me. So it's coming in two angles. But yes, for sure. I think that now we're down to, there's not an awful lot of stones that we have to turn over. I'm not saying they're still not there, because they are. We can still, we can still find a way to make ourselves better. And I think that the group of people that we have at the minute are very intent on actually finding where they are, which is also something that's different. It's not just me who's looking to move forward now. The whole team's looking to move forward. Yes. And that's very different.
So they're looking to find their own small margins.
Absolutely.
So it's just about that. We're in this umbrella, if you like, of reaching further. So it's this, improving performance year after year. Yeah.
It's a growth mindset. It's having a mindset that, you celebrate what is moving you forward, but you're identifying ways. I always say good, better, best. Well, that worked better. What's the next? What's best?
What does excellence look like?
Yeah. And sometimes you can't see that until you've made the good step or the better step. So what I think we're finding, and why reaching further works so well, is because the further you go, you see the next step. So there's just this continual evolution of, now I've seen that. Maybe if we did it this way, we can reach further. That's what makes it so intriguing, and that's why performance is on this continuum. And it's the same in your life as well. I mean, you can identify areas of your life that are working really well. And you can identify, I'm sure quite easily, areas of your life that could be working a little bit better. And then, so it's choosing the area you want to roll forward with, and the steps will keep coming the further you get.
I also think that one of the things that, that I've picked up on, and certainly the whole process has educated me on, is the fact that given the, sometimes I get viewed as the guy who's leading all of this, which I suppose looks like that from the outside, but I think Jill will agree with me, I never ever behave like that in the team. And one of the things I have learned is that sitting down with any one of the team members after we've just done a big race and having a discussion with them, but more importantly, listening to what they have to say and how they feel their little world in any given part of that race could be better, and taking that on board and trying to find a way to move that forward, because just because they can do something, they may not be able to achieve that unless I bring something to it as well. Yeah. So effectively, it's this dialogue of listening and discussion, and it's more about listening for me.
I think we in business sometimes we refer to it as feedback loops. Yeah. So it's this constant,
just constantly listening,
exchange of information.
And we have at the moment, it's one of the great concepts of little gains that I find in the team is that the team members are more willing to engage in that now, because they see a platform for themselves to shine, and they know if they shine, the whole team shines. Yeah. So it's that's the
plus it's just fun to win. It's fun to be in the sharp end of the race, and it's fun to pit yourself against the best in the world. Now sometimes we get thrown backwards from that, but it's exciting.
Well, I think it's what they say is, or I've heard them say, is that the great are not always great, the great are consistently good.
Are consistently good. Yeah, well put, I think. And Joe, for you, is finishing a race just as important sometimes? Well, maybe not as winning, but the lessons learned from each race, are they important in informing those little wins or gains that you can make? How have you found that?
I think that
over the
years? In my world of endurance right now, what I would say is there's a huge difference between how I view the answer to that question from my mainstream racing days until my endurance racing days. Endurance racing has taught me that finishing is one of the most important parts of the whole race. Matter of fact, for me, it kind of is. Yes, I want to win. That's why I'm going there. I'm a competitor. But if it turns out in any given race that I can't win, I just don't want to, spit my dummy, put my toys in my box and go away and play by myself. I actually sit down and say, right, I got to get to the end of this, because I can't make complete sense of the whole picture until I actually get to the end and be able to look back and say, well, that happened, and how did it impact the rest, and how can I stop that from happening again? I also think it's very important to keep our whole team very positive and in a positive mindset when it's actually a kind of a negative environment. If something happens that's forcing you out of the race, or the race hasn't gone your way or whatever, and I mean it's happened, and it's happened to us very recently. So I also believe that it's very important for me to send a message to all the riders that no matter what happens, I'm not giving up on them. So I'm hoping they're not going to give up on me, and we get ourselves to the finish, and we find the positive in whatever the negative was.
Yeah. And of course, there is such great learning potential in failure, and we don't sanitize failure. And in the team, I think you learn a lot from successes and you learn a lot from failure, and there's not a fantastic competitor or performer out there that hasn't failed a lot more than they've won. So it's learning how to fail, and I think that's something we could all do better with, is how we take the time to reflect on that failure or learning experience, how we teach our young people to do that, because that's just, it's a fact of life, and how we move forward from that is a testament to who that person can become. So fail, we always say fail spectacularly, fail often,
fail forward.
But I think going back to your point on the consistency in those little changes, I mean, Joe, for our listeners, Joe's really got back into endurance cycling in 2009. We're in 2020 now, so that shows you that journey the Team Joe Barr have been on, and those small marginal gains year after year after year to get you to this point. So really, is it fair to say that it's not about that immediate overhauling of everything? It's about taking each, it's that cumulative, seeing what works, how does that impact the next, and just the small consistent changes that I think we can all take something from.
I think that if you looked at our 2015 season, it's a great example of us actually dedicating a full season to try and achieve one particular aspect that was going to redefine everything going forward. We put a full year towards that, a year and a half actually towards that, because we prepared for 6 months to a year, and then we executed it. And
you talk a lot about 2015 as if that was the turning point, really.
It absolutely was.
That it nearly all came together. Those
and it took from 2009 to 2015, to gain the experience of what I needed. And I think as well, and I'm not just saying it because Jill's sitting here, but
I was going to say it.
But Jill,
in sync always.
it's the truth. It's the truth, and whenever.
Well, we got your nutrition really sorted.
Well, that was a big part of it for sure. But the bottom line is, you can say again, I'm not saying that Jill was a marginal gain here.
Yes.
she was a pretty big
huge gain.
She was a pretty big gain, all around, but in many fronts actually, not just in cycling, but fixing all of the, it was a point of realization that, I need to rethink, I need to change my mindset, and it also taught me about failure, because it's like my good friend Len Forquist and I discuss regularly about failure and performance living at the same place. You can't have performance unless you fail, really.
You can't have gain unless
you can't have
fail.
gain. The two live together. So the difference between those two things is so minute that's you on the edge. And if you're on the edge, then if you can manage to balance yourself on that edge, that's performance for me.
And it's so interesting, because I think we all fear failure, and we see it as a weakness. But yet, for you and Team Joe Barr, you see it as you know, a real learning, that it can be a gain and that you can improve and go from strength to strength. And I think that's a really valuable lesson and insight to take from this.
Yeah.
Painful, Gillian.
Yeah,
Yes.
failure it's
Of
painful.
course.
I mean, and it's, I think it's, I mean, I've watched Joe come home after a do not finish, a DNF in a race, and it's really hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch someone you love go through that, and every failure is a sore loss. But then I watch him hold it and turn it around and unravel it and reflect on it, and slowly that emotion kind of seeps away, and what is left is the drive to move forward again. But what I think is so important is taking the organic time to allow that process to happen before the gain can occur. So I think we're so scared of failure because there's that crushing sense of loss, and everyone has that, no matter what level of competitor.
Sure.
I think of relationships, and I think of all areas of life. It's getting through that initial loss and then looking for the gain and getting going again.
I think the evidence that we have in the team of that, and there is evidence, and that was really my failure in 2012 in Race Across America in my first go, and turning that around after what happened, and gone back in 2014 and turning it into a success. That was a 24-month period, and out of that 24 months, like, it probably took me 6 months to get myself, my head and my body back to a place that I could even think about going down that road again after what happened.
Yeah.
But
so I mean, it's so true. You just can't change things overnight.
No.
And I think we have to nearly stop beating ourselves up and saying that, why haven't we achieved more in life, or why haven't we recovered from this more quickly? That it takes time,
I think that's key.
Gains and wins and all those things, they can take time.
Yeah, and I think as well that one of the reasons why you need the time, because there's also a reason, and that is one of the other key aspects that we've come to learn as a team, is that the preparation for what you're doing has got to be at its top end. If you want to have an exceptional performance, then the preparation has got to be exceptional. That's the two things that sit side by side for me.
Yeah. So, Joe and Gillian, if you had to sum up really why small margins in the professional capacity, in the field that you're in, and at that elite level of sport, why does it matter? Why is it so important? What would you say those are? Do you have any that really, for you,
that made a big difference?
That made a difference?
For me, it's nutrition.
Nutrition?
Yeah, for sure.
This and that really is more off-bike nutrition, daily nutrition. Funny story about Joe. If I wasn't in Joe's life, Joe would live on toast and cheese. He really would. And he's gone a long way on toast and cheese. And I understand, because it takes time and effort to prepare things. So
nothing wrong with toast and cheese.
Nothing wrong with toast and cheese. But it is that attention to the consistency again. What I love here, my final thoughts on kind of marginal gains. What I love about that concept is that they're achievable in everybody's life. Everyone knows one little thing they could do today or tomorrow that would move them forward consistently. Yeah. So performance and being elite is built on small gains. It's not built on huge change. And it's the same with health. Health is built on small change. And if we could see it, small change as being valuable, then I think we'd do it more consistently. So you're worth it.
We would.
I
think we procrastinate because we're thinking, I don't want to have to do that. It's going to be very arduous. And it is probably a mindset of just think of it as small, simple changes that can actually make a big impact. Yeah. So thank you so much, for that insight. Thank you. Thank you again.